For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast, and welcome to Internal Development, a series of 5 podcasts covering the 5 most important young Suns players. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. As always, Sam, how you doing?
Episode 2, baby. I feel like Internal Development started off on the right foot the other day with David. I am very excited for today's episode, Mike. I am very excited for today's guest. I feel like this is a long time in the making. You can have the honors to introduce him, though.
Yeah, I would call him a friend of ours at this point. Somebody that
Absolutely.
We've talked about his videos on YouTube for a while. We've promoted some of them on our podcast. I talk to him on Twitter all the time. Durag Hoops on YouTube, Durag Hoops on Twitter. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel. Check out his Twitter account. Durag, how you doing?
Gentlemen, it has been a long time coming. I'm excited to talk about my guy, Mikal Bridges, today. Thank you very much for having me on. It's crazy to follow up somebody like David Nash on this podcast, so I'm excited to get started, man.
Yeah, I mean, when David started flipping through his notebook full of notes, I was like, oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot.
Exactly. I'm over here waiting, prepping myself, and I'm like, okay, hold on. I gotta prep a little harder now.
There's no pressure to go like an hour and a half today, just so you know. It can be like a standard hour-long episode. I'm sure we're going to talk about Mikal for a while. Well, let me start with this. Mikal Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Durag, there was a very specific reason that we brought you on. First of all, you did a whole video on Mikal Bridges recently. Again, we usually do all the plugs at the end and whatever, but I'd encourage people right now to go check out Durag's YouTube channel if they haven't. He's been grinding literally for years, so that's why I say this has been a long time in the making. But Mikal Bridges, is it safe to say, because when we were planning out who we wanted to bring on each episode, when Mike said Mikal Bridges, I was like, Durag. It just clicked. Is Mikal Bridges your favorite player on the Suns? If not, where would you currently rank him? Not among best players on the Suns, but just among your favorite players on the Suns.
All right, so yes. And the reason for that is most people love the main guy, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. Me, I love the little things, and Mikal is the definition of the little things. And a guy like Sean Marion, who plugged all the roles that we needed, on a 60-win team, Mikal gives me those same kind of vibes. And so just kind of correlating Marion being my favorite player of all time to Mikal, it's a pretty easy transition to fall in love with his type of game.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting time to talk about Bridges because right now we're still waiting for an extension, right? We don't know if he's going... I assume he's going to be re-signed to an extension. We don't know when that's coming, how much it's going to be. We're recording this on the same day that Aaron Gordon just signed a massive extension with the Denver Nuggets.
Yikes.
You kind of look at that as a potential... estimated amount for maybe what somebody like Mikal Bridges could get. I don't know. Aaron Gordon technically did have the beginning of his career. He had the ability to create a lot more shots than Mikal Bridges, and I think, like I've talked about commonly, that's what gets you paid in the NBA. So it's an interesting time. Let's get right into the series here, Internal Development from Mikal Bridges. Now the story about an NBA team that lost everything and the one thing that had no choice but to make them all better. It's internal development. As we know, for the last episode, the first thing we talked... By the way, if you haven't listened to the last episode, go back and listen to it, and then just try to listen to these in order, because I'm sure we're going to build off some of the things that we've talked about in previous episodes. First, we're going to talk about who Mikal Bridges is right now, and I think that's where we got to start, and I'll start with you, Durag. When you think of Mikal Bridges, obviously it sounds like you think of him as a glue guy, just as what you said, someone who kind of fills all those holes. What else do you think of when it comes to Bridges?
I think of somebody who always makes the right decision, like regardless of play. So, on defense, he's rotating properly. He's on offense, he's cutting properly. He's opening up driving lanes and, all that kind of stuff that somebody who doesn't get all the credit does. Like a Dennis Rodman almost. Just somebody who's filling all those kind of roles that the team needs. And I think Mikal's that ultimate guy who is efficient in every type of scenario. And I just think that a little bit more of aggressiveness would do him a lot of good.
Sam, what do you think?
That's the name of the game, man. I think of a guy who is just not dominating, but he's just excelling at every facet of the game. I mean, I think Mikal Bridges, by year 3 now, end of year 3, has a legitimate claim to being one of the hardest working players in the NBA. And Durag said it right there with his claim about efficiency. Basically everything Mikal Bridges is good at. Like, there's only so many ways that you can score on a possession of offensive basketball. And if you break it down into all the different ways you can score on a post-up, ISO, pick-and-roll ball handler, spot-up, cut, whatever, transition, look at Mikal Bridges, his synergy stats, and he's going to be good at pretty much everything to a remarkable degree. So the reason this conversation becomes so interesting is, we're starting off saying, what's he good at? I think he's good at quite a lot. And
yeah, exactly.
That just gives you endless possibilities for what he could be, right?
Yeah, I think that we've sort of rallied against the 3-and-D label for Mikal Bridges in the past.
As has Mikal himself,
yeah.
Which Durag pointed out, yeah.
And, I think a lot of guys don't want to be limited in their scope just when you describe them in general. So why would you want to be described as a player who only does 2 things well? But Mikal does those 2 things really well. That's the one thing that I will say about Mikal Bridges is, is that he's the first thing you think of, I think, is defense. And I think it's sort of an Iron Man defense thing because, one, he doesn't miss any games, as we know. Even if he hurts himself at all, he just kind of Wolverines himself back to health and then continues to play. He doesn't miss games, and then he's always playing defense. Now I'm going to start with my first stat of the episode. Of course, I have stats here. But I think this is kind of interesting. Of course, like I did with the last episode, I looked at the B-Ball Index stats. The B-Ball Index will rate your position based on what you do on the court, on offense and on defense. So on offense, Mikal Bridges is rated a small forward, which of course makes sense. On defense, they actually label him a point guard because of how often he's guarding the main ball handler on the other team. So, in a sense, he's essentially, outside of possibly DeAndre, the most important player defensively because he's that first line of attack. He's the one at the point of attack guarding that player. And I mentioned this on our last episode, where Devin Booker was in the 4th tier of usage for defense. What that means is he's guarding the guy on the other team that has the ball the 4th most, essentially. Mikal is, of course, in the usage tier 1. He guards the guy with the ball the most on the other team, and that's what the Suns rely on him to do, and he does that more than 98% of the league, so he's in the top 2% of guarding the guy on the ball the most. So the Suns rely on him and lean on him heavily to guard the ball, and I think that's what we need him to do. It's kind of interesting because I think about Mikal Bridges, I think about his size. He's very skinny.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't really play power forward. I guess we're sort of jumping ahead in this discussion to things that maybe he could improve on. I almost feel like, in a sense, if Mikal came along in the 90s, he would have almost been pushed into a shooting guard position. I don't even think he would be a small forward at some point. It's like he's right in that sort of middle area. but we ask him to guard the ball the most. He's obviously very, very good at it, and we rely on it a lot. But Durag, what do you think about his defense?
Well, to kind of jump the gun real quick to something you just said about him being a 2, that was something that I was kind of preaching earlier on in his career. That was something that they had him do at Villanova, which was guard the top of the 1-3-1 zone. And that was something that when we forced him into that power forward role and he's being, guarding post-ups, which he can do rather well, but when that was his role, I just knew that he wasn't happy. That's when he developed the hitch. I just think a lot of that particular role and situation played a big part in why he was so inefficient for his first 2 years of his career. Getting Ricky Rubio, in partway through, and then Chris Paul now, and the additional people like Jay Crowder, Torrey Craig, Cam Johnson to take the pressure off of him defensively, allows him to kind of flourish in this on-ball role. And I think that is his proper role. So as you're saying, like he should be a 2. I think that ultimately Booker is our 1 and Mikal is our 2 going forward. And Cam Johnson might be able to slot at either the 3 or 4, depending on the development of, potentially Jalen Smith or DeAndre Ayton. How each of those guys develop can play a role in where Cam Johnson can slot in there. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. He is a 2, and defensively, what he is a master class in rotations and irritation. He gets under people's skin, I think, with his length and his ability to kind of anticipate their go-to moves, and just irritate them with his bothersome wingspan. And I think him and DeAndre ultimately form one of the most dynamic and versatile 1-2, 1-5 combinations in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the stats back that up too. I don't have like the subscription data to tell you right now, but I know for a fact, like I've seen very smart basketball writers quote before at some point midway through the season that like Bridges and Ayton as a 1-5 combo, or just as like a pick and roll defensive combo, were dominating in terms of what they were allowing opponents to score.
Yeah.
I
think it was
amazing,
0.6
the two of them together.
points per possession.
Yeah, right. Like
it was very
I'm talking
bad.
about some Nikias Duncan article from months ago using second spectrum data that I don't have access to, but it's out there. It's been quoted before. But yeah, man, I mean, I think Mikal he's so. Here's the thing: he has the capacity to be so disruptive, right, guys? But when you talk about him being, I forget the word you used, Durag, but just like getting under people's skin. There's an element of that he's really good at just because he has the natural length that like you can tell guys realize that they can't put the same moves on him that they could with others. But then there's another element of if we're talking about how far Mikal has already come, I distinctly remember all the times that Chris Paul got on Mikal this season and talked about in interviews or in post-game pressers about how he wanted Mikal to be even more aggressive with his on-ball defense, how he did so much for them schematically from the point of attack, but how and I think this is going to be something we talk about a lot today, just the mental aspect of it. Not that Mikal, I mean, he's remarkably intelligent and he knows exactly what he's doing on the court at all times, but there was a mental kind of aggressiveness in him that they were trying to unlock a little bit on defense because he's already so good in that point of attack role, but they know that if he was even a little bit more aggressive, they could maybe squeeze something more out of him.
Yeah, and just to add some context to something that Durag was talking about there, as I said, the positional role is point guard. Essentially, that's what he's rated as because he's guarding point guards so often. In 1920, his positional role defensively was power forward. So, like, just to think about the difference in role that, and what he's capable of doing is sort of guarding point guard to power forward and everything in between. I think there is a certain type of power forward that can get the best of Mikal Bridges strength-wise, but more and more we're seeing those types of power forwards go away. So more often than not, he's capable of guarding 1 through 4. But that kind of shows the difference between, in a sense, it's actually the difference between Ricky Rubio and Chris Paul in that Ricky Rubio was more commonly trusted to guard the point of attack as the point guard, whereas Chris Paul on the Suns with his age is more often sort of pushed off to the corner to guard guys in the corner and guard sort of the lower usage guys, where Mikal's kind of put on that. But I actually agree with you, Durag. I think that if you're trying to maximize what Mikal Bridges does well, and just be sort of a pest and pesky defensively and bother guys, I think that you got to put him on the ball. And that includes something that I really love that he does really well, is he tends to blow up dribble handoffs. So like the centers are trying to hand off the ball, and he'll get between the offensive player that's trying to get the ball and the center that's trying to hand it off faster than anybody on the Suns, and something that he's capable of doing. For his size, it's kind of crazy how well he is at doing that, especially I think part of that is because he is skinny. Like if he was a bigger guy, he might be running into the screener a little bit more and getting some offensive fouls or like off the ball fouls, things like that. But he's very capable of, I think the main thing that's actually difficult to put into statistics is he gets the offense to do things that they don't want to do. So whatever their first option is, whatever the main thing they're trying to do is, he kind of pushes them down the line, gets them on their second or third option. And like, you're not going to see those in the statistics, but over the course of a game, it kind of wears them down. And I think that's why I think you often see him up at the top of the Suns with like certain types of plus-minus stats, like over a long period of time. I think there's a reason he has such a massive impact on that, even if his scoring isn't really high or things like that. But I think we can talk more about his defense when we get into him improving too. But do you guys have anything else defensively?
I'll save it for a later conversation.
And Sam,
I'll get into some offense. No, I'll get into some offense for now. I mean, there's just like a ton to talk about that Mikal is good at.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because, yeah, I'll save that too. Let's get into offense, because I think this is an interesting conversation as far as what he's good at offensively. I have quite a long list of stuff, which is kind of interesting for his role. But I'll let you guys go first. Durag, what do you have when you think about Mikal Bridges offensively? What's he good at?
What's he good at? He is probably one of the best transition finishers in the entire NBA. His ability to take maybe just one dribble and extend further than anybody else it's almost unmatched.
Can I give you a stat on that, actually?
Of course.
For players that have at least 3 transition possessions per game, Mikal Bridges is number 1 in efficiency.
Yeah,
at 1.39 points per possession, tied with Jason Tatum. Now, if you look that up, you'll see TJ Warren at the top of that list for 4 games. That doesn't count. You can throw that out. So basically, the very top of the league is Mikal Bridges and Jason Tatum. So you're right on the money there. Literally top of the league.
I'm just saying right now, I don't think that's the last time we're going to say Jason Tatum's name in this podcast. More on that later.
Agreed.
All right, continue, Durag.
So not only the transition finishing is phenomenal, his 3-point shooting is finally it's stabilizing to those Villanova levels. Mikal was pegged as one of the, if not the best shooter coming out of the draft, and he's finally starting to realize that potential again. I think in large part to roll. Like, he's no longer banging in the post for 40 minutes a game. He's able to kind of play to his strengths on both sides of the ball, leak out when guys shoot threes and get in transition, and all of that stuff I think really has played a role in how his efficiency's jumped. And then a sneaky talent of his is the mid-range and his passing ability. One stat that I do want to point out, again from B-Ball Index, is his passing creation quality. He's in the 94th percentile, and I went and watched back all of his assists on the season, and the type...
Did you really watch every
single one?
Because I love
every single one.
I knew there's a reason we brought you
every single one. So I went back and I watched...
What did you learn? What did you learn from that?
That, he has a lot of safe assists where the Suns have that Spurs-esque ball movement where he's passing to the wide open pass, to the corner or the top of the key. But
in the middle of the hockey assist, basically.
Exactly.
Right? He's the second guy.
Exactly. He's benefiting from the hockey assist by getting the assist. But also, he's a two-handed passer most of the time, but he does have a little bit of sauce with his right hand. He can flick some like, bounce passes, and there was 2 possessions in particular against Cleveland where he was a pick and roll ball handler with DA and hit him twice in the pocket for layups. And it's just some of that untapped potential. It's just so enticing, and his efficiency on all of these metrics is like mind-blowing. Even just like in comparison to some other Suns, it's just like blows some of these people out of the water. And it's like, why is it him? Is it scheme? And that is something I also want to get into at a later point. So I'll kind of say that.
Is that the Cleveland game, by the way? Like the overtime?
The one where he took over.
I think so. He had 5 assists in that game. It might have been the overtime one. I can't remember.
What a fascinating
I just want to
game.
say, I also noticed, I think any Suns fan who watched all the games noticed over the season, it just felt like Mikal had, and part of it is they play a lot of minutes together, I guess, but it felt like Mikal had just good chemistry with DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
And so that was a stat I looked up too, Durag, because you mentioned those couple of possessions where he found Ayton with the pocket passes. Mikal had 39 assists to DeAndre Ayton this year, far more than any other guy. I think the next most was like 25 to Booker. So given how many minutes those guys all played together, basically everyone in the starting lineup, he develops that chemistry pretty well. And you say, is it him or is it scheme? Well, partially maybe scheme, but I think you could make a pretty convincing argument that Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, they have the same opportunities often in the Suns scheme to make those same type of reads, and they just don't. So I think that's a pretty good sign that Mikal Bridges has that untapped playmaking in him.
Well, I think if you're looking at passes to DeAndre Ayton too, that's often, if you get past the first line of defense, then the second guy comes up to you. That's usually the guy guarding DeAndre Ayton. That's what opens up that pass. So I mean that it's almost, you can almost use that as a way to judge his ability to penetrate. And I also think there's a play that we've talked about a lot, Sam, where he's sort of the flare cut when Chris Paul or Devin Booker is being guarded on the perimeter, and they can't get the ball to DeAndre Ayton because they're fronting DeAndre Ayton. So
exactly.
Mikal will flare to the free throw line, catch it at the free throw line, and then he makes that really pretty lob pass to DeAndre Ayton over the defense, which is not an easy pass. That's a difficult pass. I always call those types of lob passes, it's like shooting on a bucket that's moving. It's almost as specific, pinpoint accuracy as a shot, except that the target is moving around. So he does really well on those. What else, Sam, stands out to you offensively for him?
So I mean, just the efficiency is absurd, guys. There are players who are efficient. Devin Booker, who we talked about last episode, a very efficient player, and volume considerations have to be taken into account.
Definitely.
But Mikal is historically efficient. He just is. This year he was, if you take his 2-point percentage, not his overall field goal percentage, but just how he shot on twos, he was in the 60-40-80 club. I want to read you guys the list of all players ever who have been in the 60-40-80 club, again, 60 being 2-point percentage, not field goal percentage. It is Duncan Robinson for the past 2 years, John Collins last year, Steve Kerr 1 year in the 90s, Chris Mullin 1 year in the 90s, and then Mikal Bridges this year. That's not necessarily to demonstrate those aren't superstar names, but just it's not something that happens, really.
Wow.
And I think with Mikal specifically, he makes his free throws. I wish he got to the free throw line more. Plenty more to talk about there later. But when he does get there, he makes them. He's come so far with his three-point shooting.
Yeah.
I looked it up. He shot 31% on wide-open threes his rookie year. So for him to go to that, to being a dead-eye corner shooter, and even a good above-the-break shooter as well for the Suns in year 3, has been a remarkable level of progress that gives you so much confidence in his ability to develop other facets of his game. So that's another thing. But then, like Durag talked about his sneaky mid-range ability, the fact that the guy has this mid-range ability, he drives and pulls up from 12 to 15 feet and has that sweet stroke and that nice high release point. The fact that he can do that pretty frequently and still shot over 60% on all of his twos, it's a special level of efficiency. It really doesn't come around that often.
Exactly.
It really doesn't.
Just kind of to add on that.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go.
I was gonna say just
to
to add on to that. Like his impact metrics on this b-ball index, I mean, he was beating out a lot of these big names when you look at like ISO efficiency and post up efficiency, and that's per 70 possessions, obviously. So if we're expanding his game a little bit, but that type of impact, again, like you're saying, it just doesn't ever come around often, and he's really, really special, and I just want people to like understand that fact.
Yeah, I mean, like a guy of Mikal's usage, he averaged 13.1 points per game this year. A guy with Mikal's usage rate and taking the number of shots he takes should be like a 9 or 10 point per game player. And I know that doesn't seem like a crazy difference, but like if you consider that that's like 30 or 40% above the expectation of the type of player that he should be, and you extrapolate that a little bit, now obviously as volume goes up, efficiency tends to not go up to the same degree. I'm not going to get into all the math about it now, but there is just this clear notion of, what if we just gave this guy 10 or 15 more reps a game?
Yeah.
What would happen?
Exactly.
And a lot more of the episode, I guess, is going to be about, well, should the Suns actually do that, because would it benefit the team?
Yeah.
But I think just in a vacuum, Mikal is so talented offensively that, let's just say in a vacuum for a second, irregardless of how the team plays, if you give him more touches, he will score the ball more.
Yes.
I think that like there's no question in my mind at this point that Mikal Bridges could be a 20 point per game player. Could he be a 20 point per game player? Well, I guess the better question is, do the Suns need him to be that 20 point per game player? That's the question for next year. But could he do it? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out to me when thinking about offensively is his shot selection. He just never takes a bad shot. Just never. And I think that adds to the point that Durag was making about his passing. He's a capable passer, but like part of not taking a bad shot is also knowing when to move the ball and to move the ball quickly. 0.5 style, as they call it. Another statistic on the B-ball index actually rates the 3-point shot quality. So it's like they call it an overall measure of shot quality, combining shot location, openness, and the type of shot. He's in the 99th percentile. He's one of the best in the NBA at taking the right kinds of 3-point shots. And I think when you think about that stat, first of all, it's kind of vague and it's might be a little weird to some people. But just think about watching the games. You never see him take a bad shot. Like, he's always taking the right shot, and that's why he's able to actually meet those really interesting and really dynamic efficiency numbers, because he takes smart shots. And I think over time, with his career, it's just smart things. Smart at Villanova, smart when he gets to the NBA, smart in the playoffs, smart in the finals. Now you can make an argument on whether or not he should have done more, but that's something that I think we could talk about later. Shot creation, there's not a lot there. We'll get into that more later. But I think that specifically what he's doing with the shots he's taking is very, very good. And to go back to something, Durag, you talked about as well, off-ball movement and cutting is also something that he's very good at. Is he parked in the corner a lot? Yeah. Well, we do sort of run a pick-and-roll offense with Chris Paul, so that means that you kind of need at least 1-2 guys parked in the corner. There are times where you sort of lift, as Zach Lowe calls it, lift away from the corner in time and in rhythm with that pick-and-roll offense. He's very, very smart at that. And I think he finds the right times to cut, and that part actually goes into the efficiency as well, and the actual shot value, as they call it, with the B-ball index. Never taking the wrong shot, cutting at the right times, doing the right things, and then, of course, the transition attacking that you said. Anything else offensively, Durag, we'll start with you here, that stands out to you as far as what he does?
Well, I just kind of want to pose an interesting question here about just like overall role and kind of where he could go with more opportunities. So he had 600 minutes without Chris Paul. And, you think of Chris Paul, you think of the point guard, you think of the type of shots Mikal gets with Chris Paul. And it was interesting to me that he was extremely more efficient without Chris Paul. He got to the rim 6% more often. He shot 6% better at the rim. He was better from the short mid-range without Chris Paul. He was about 5% worse from the corners, but he was 7% better from above the break. So it was just intriguing to me that all of his efficiency numbers basically skyrocketed, except he wasn't parked in the corner, which was why his percentage went down.
You heard it here first.
So
Durag hates Chris Paul.
I do not hate Chris Paul.
He
I
already
love
said
Chris Paul.
Devin Booker's the future point guard. And now he's giving us statistics on. No, I'm just kidding. I saw you tweet about that too. I find that to be really interesting. I don't really have an explanation for that. Sam, does anything stand out to you as to why that would be the case?
Not off the top of my head.
So
but Durag, do you have a hypothesis?
Yes, I do. So off the top of my head, Landry Shamet, bro. Landry Shamet, I feel like is going to pay giant dividends for Mikal, specifically because he does two things. He comes off screens like a madman, and that forces rotations. And they sometimes use Mikal as like a screener. But if Mikal is a ball handler on the weak side and Shamet's lifting, Mikal has shown the ability to fake that handoff, get to the rim. He's shown the ability to feed the handoff, set a screen, cut for the guy, get open, and pitch it back, which would boost his assists. And just watching I watched all of Shamet's shots too, for my Shamet video. The type of shots that he gets off of these plays, specifically with like Kevin Durant and James Harden, setting a screen for a bigger initiator, he just generates a lot of gravity from the 3-point line. And Mikal excels in wide open spaces. So for me, I just think that somebody like him playing more with Mikal Bridges, less with Chris Paul, not to say that that's ultimately great for the Suns. I just think it's interesting to see how maybe Mikal gets a little bit more freedom in the second unit, or maybe Chris Paul takes more of a prominent role in feeding guys like DeAndre and Jay Crowder in the second unit, and we go all in on Booker at the 1, Mikal at the 2, Cam at the 3, and just kind of run Shamet as a side 1, but he's kind of like a 4, spacing the floor, setting screens, and then whoever, at the 5. I just think that he has a pretty dynamic skill set that complements Mikal really well in the type of shots that Mikal wants to get, the type of moves that he does, like back cuts. Shamet hit a lot of people on back cuts for assists. It's just things like that where Chris Paul doesn't always make that first read. And I think Shamet is really likely to make that first read, and that's where Mikal excels.
I mean, we can just be honest, like, with the amount that Chris Paul touches the ball, it's hard. As good as he is at assisting people, it's hard to play alongside Chris Paul. Especially, it's hard to play along both Chris Paul and Devin Booker and still be a high-usage player. There's just not really enough touches to go around. Mm-hmm. So to your point, Durag, you got to find other ways around it. It's not that I'm against Landry Shamet. I want to remind people again, I'm not against Landry Shamet. Mike, I heard you earlier trying to give me shit. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask Durag this question about Landry Shamet, so I'm glad he brought it up organically. I didn't even have to ask. But you seem to be into the idea of point book. I don't disagree with you. I just haven't really seen anything from Monty to indicate that he's into that, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, have you seen signs from Monty that, not that this would be the thing that you think they should do, but that this is something that it actually seems like is going to happen? He seems pretty much all in on Chris Paul and campaign as the point guards to me. From what we saw last year, things can change.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much to kind of look at last year and make a hypothesis like this. It's kind of stretching it. But I think to something that David and you guys talked about in your first podcast, using the regular season to experiment, this is the perfect type of thing, in my opinion, to kind of see if you can find a magical spark. Those two together, again, I think they just have super, super complementary skill sets. Like, either one is interchangeable as the screener or the shooter. And I just think that dynamic, they were hanging out together at the ASU game. Mikal is from Philly. Shamet was in Philly. I think that there's a little bit of hidden kind of like best friend potential there, where he like fills the role of Javon Carter.
I love that. Buddy ball.
Seriously, dude. I think that it's something that could really pay dividends if Monty's willing to experiment and the Suns in general are willing to kind of use this regular season, which seems like all the contenders are doing is to find stuff that just works, see lineups that just work. I think this one has the potential to maybe yield some crazy good results.
Yeah,
I would like to allow you guys a chance to be a little bit clickbaity for a second, if I can. And get into a discussion just real quick of overall with Mikal and who he is right now before we move on. Do you have so we're about to be into the portion of the preseason where player rankings come out from every outlet and make everyone really mad. It's coming, and Suns Twitter is going to be really mad about it. I don't know why, but it's going to happen, just like every fan base is going to be riled up. If you guys had to guess, or just what you think right now, where do you think Mikal Bridges ranks as an NBA player going into year 4? I just want to throw out a few stats first. He ranked last year 77th in points per game, so in the top 100, but not too special. He ranked 5th in the entire NBA last year in true shooting percentage. If you look at just the efficiency outlook, he also ranked from an advanced stats point of view 21st in VORP, value over replacement player. Take what you will from it. But what do you guys think? Where is Mikal Bridges right now? Does he have a top 50 argument?
Yes.
That basically implies that he could be the second. That implies, just to make sure you guys know what you're saying, though, it implies that Mikal Bridges could be like, because if you're in the top 60, you can be the second best player on virtually any NBA team. Right?
I guess. I mean, lots of people can be the second best player on a bad team. And that's not to say that that's what Mikal Bridges would be, but I wouldn't look at it that way necessarily. What I would say is I think ranking players is dumb, first of all.
Okay, well, thanks for throwing out my idea.
It's a good idea, but I'm just telling people, don't get mad at it. Don't waste time being angry at it. It's just they're trying to generate clicks, I think, in a lot of cases. But two, I think that the type of people that make these lists often try to they have like hipster picks, if you will, and I think Mikal Bridges is going to be one of those picks. So for me, I guess more than anything else, I'm predicting what they're going to do, and I think most likely they're going to put Mikal Bridges higher on these lists. I mean, and rightfully so after the run to the finals, and I could see him around like 50. I think that's probably somewhere where he could be. What do you think, Durag?
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe 45. Truthfully, he's definitely in the top 50 discussion though, in my opinion. Like if you have him right outside, 60-ish, whatever, that's okay. But truthfully, he is one of the most impactful players in the NBA, especially regarding his role. Like the stuff that he is asked to do, that it's just not every player meets that criteria, and he's truly special in all these regards. So I do think he's got like a top 50 argument for sure.
But where's Aaron Gordon on those lists?
Oh, man.
I guess is my question. All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about where he can improve. We'll talk about the internal development part of this podcast and who he could be going forward. We'll be right back.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Hand-picked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
Let's be honest. Shopping, not my thing. I go to the store. There's a lot of people that, it's just not my thing. It's not football. All right. I spend way too long scrolling websites just looking for something simple like a nice pair of jeans, and I'm either overwhelmed by all the choices or can't find anything my style and end up with stuff that doesn't fit and doesn't work. That's why I use Stitch Fix. You just take a quick style quiz, share your size, your vibe, and your budget, and boom, you're matched with a real human, stylists who handle the rest. They take care of the work for you. They send you a fix box with clothes that actually fit and make sense for your life, work, weekends, whatever. It saves you time. You look great, and you don't even have to think about it. That's the best part. It's no risk, all style. Try it all on in the comfort of your home. Keep what works, send back the rest. Free shipping and returns, always, and no subscription required. Plus, get a free try-on for your first fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/podcast to get $20 off your first order, and they'll waive your styling fee. That's stitchfix.com/podcast.
All right, time to talk about what Mikal Bridges can improve on. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation because there's so much potential there. And if you look at the stats, and some of the things that he does really well, the potential just kind of flies at you. It's really, really obvious when you're looking at who he is and thinking about the opportunities that he could have going forward. Let's break things down kind of slowly here, get into each thing sort of one by one and where we think that he can improve. Durag, what's the first thing that stands out on his internal development and who he can be going forward?
Okay, so who he can be going forward, that's a great question. I think who Mikal can be going forward is, as you guys said, the second most impactful player on a championship level team. I think that he's pretty much right on the cusp of that right now. The consistency that we saw in the playoffs, it wasn't what we hoped, but I do think that he's shown that he learns from everything, every obstacle that he's faced. He just works diligently to get better, and I do think that overall, if he can just improve his consistency in just being aggressive, that's the ultimately the number 2 player on a championship team that he can finally reach that level.
Durag, I point out in your video you put some Kevin Durant clips in there. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Who was the second most impactful player on the Warriors championship teams? Was it Kevin Durant or was it Steph Curry? It's just a random question.
It's probably, statistically, it's probably Kevin Durant, right?
I would say it's probably
That's
Kevin
weird to
Durant.
say.
I think it's open-ended. Wow.
Yeah.
I think
two MVPs.
Curry's gravity is legitimately insane, and just taking some context out of it, I think they were worried more about what Curry could do to them than what they knew Kevin was consistently going to do to them. There's something to be said about somebody who's going to do this and get 35, but does he want to score 50? He could, but I think that's where KD kind of struggles, is he doesn't always want to do everything, right?
Right.
His evolution as a player has been fascinating, and just to give props to the man himself, the whole Mikal video is literally inspired by J. Kyle, man. That guy is phenomenal. I'd say he's probably top 3 on basketball NBA YouTube. He's just in another realm in terms of creating a story and a vibe, seriously. So that was half the inspiration for the Bridges video.
You know how the NBA for its 75th anniversary is putting out the 75 best players of all time. They're updating their list that they did from the 50th anniversary. I think they should do something similar with content creators in basketball, the 75 best journalists / NBA analysts ever. And I would nominate Kyle at this point.
Oh,
just
yeah.
Slipping in
He's up there.
Friend of the pod.
He's up there. He's up there for sure. But the kind of Kevin Durant.
Can I ask you?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I want to ask you about, your sort of, I think that, in a lot of ways, I think we're talking about what these guys can be next year. which is tough because you're talking about the second best player in a championship team that would technically vault him past Chris Paul or Devin Booker, depending on who you rank, as the second best on this team. And I guess the way I look at it is, when we watch Kevin Durant, I think that maybe he has made tall, lanky guys, he's made it seem like it's almost easier than it is for those guys to be good ball handlers. And I think
1,000%, yes.
Of course.
When we're talking about specifically the largest hurdle that Mikal Bridges will have in becoming the second best player on a team, to me, the overall archetype is shot creation, like creating for himself. But the number one skill that needs to improve in order for him to get better at that is specifically ball handling. And I think ball handling is a tough one to judge because you want to judge based on what you've seen, but sometimes these guys don't even get a lot of opportunities to handle the ball. We don't know if that's because in practice they're not capable of it or just because of the specific role that they're playing on the team. So when you think about Mikal Bridges, you must be factoring in a large improvement in ball handling in order for him to get there. And is there something that stood out when you're watching him play to you to make you believe that that is possible?
You know, actually, I'm actually not factoring in the biggest leap in ball handling. I'm of the belief that ball handling is one of the, probably the most hardest skill to develop at a game functional level. That's why the conversation, kind of just to pivot a little bit about DA developing ball handling skills, is so intriguing to me, because we've seen time and time again that that's not the norm. If you have ball handling skills, those tend to stick and they don't tend to grow from where they are, truthfully, too much. You kind of learn to get to your spots better, but your ball handling in general doesn't necessarily improve. So that's something that I actually don't bank on too much. I think it's something about Mikal's ability to score without dribbles, almost in a Klay Thompson-esque role, that really separates him from a lot of these other people. And the thing about the J. Kyle Mann video is he referenced that Kevin Durant shot the most kind of catch and shoot shots of his entire career last season. It was like 45% or something. That's kind of the type of player that I envision Mikal to be, which is just a deadly person who doesn't necessarily need to dribble. He just catches and he's finishing at the rim, or he's doing a quick one dribble post up move on a small guard, or he's shooting a catch and shoot three above the break instead of from the corners, and that opens up everything for his game. So I'm not truly factoring in a gigantic leap in ball handling. I think his ancillary skills will really shine if he's just given the ball in his spots, and he gets to them phenomenally. Like, that's why his efficiency is off the charts, because he knows how to get to his spots consistently. He just needs to be more aggressive, or the Suns need to empower him to be more aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I don't, it's tough, like you said, Mike, because we don't get a ton of his ball handling, but when we do, when we see the pick and roll tandem between him and Ayton, and kind of, in a lot of those cases, the defenses don't really respect him, so maybe they're dropping back, but he looks relatively comfortable. Like, he looks comfortable enough to play with some of the other big boys who are 20-point-per-game scorers in the NBA, at least to my eye. The problem to me is just how frequently, and I've talked about this before, but how frequently he stops short. And I don't know if it's necessarily a ball handling thing. By stopping short, I mean stopping short at 15 feet and settling for the jumper. You like using B-ball index stats, so here's a B-ball index stat. This entire series is basically just an advertisement. So Kranjis, if you're out there listening, Krishna. Yes, Krishna as well. Shout out those guys for running that site. But he ranks in the first percentile in B-ball indexes. Did you see that one? In B-ball indexes.
Yes, it's really
getting
bad.
to the rim rating. How well does Mikal Bridges get to the rim? Now, keep in mind, their getting to the rim rating is not about receiving the ball in like transition or off a cut. It's how well do you self-create yourself to the rim. Mikal Bridges ranks in the first percentile. That's bad.
Which means that 99% of the league is technically better at that than him by the statistics.
We all watched the finals, okay? The Suns were this scrappy, defying analytics, mid-range team that gets buckets, old school style, whatever. And it worked for a lot of the playoffs. But, we saw eventually them run into a wall in the finals where they were trading contested twos for either threes from Chris Middleton or easy shots at the rim from Giannis
or free throws.
Unfortunately, or free throws. But you don't get free throws unless you attack the rim. For the most part, you don't get free throws unless you make a concerted effort to. Unfortunately, it's often this way in the NBA. Lunge yourself at the defensive players and hope that the officials give you a whistle. It just doesn't happen if you don't get inside the like 4 or 5 foot area, the restricted area. So for Mikal, he's got all the talent in the world, and I love that his mid-range game has developed to the point that it has. But he doesn't take the next step as an offensive player if he can't, and it's tough. It's really tough. But if he can't develop the mindset to attack, the aggression, and we've talked about the same thing with DA to an extent, but with Mikal it's really a little bit different because I feel like he's shown so much of a capacity to do a lot of this stuff, but he's just right on the cusp. Let me give you guys a stat related to that, right? So I already said I firmly believe Mikal Bridges could be a 20-point per game scorer just by increasing his reps because he makes the mid-range shots, he makes the threes, he makes the cuts, transition, whatever. Well, Mikal Bridges had a really bad free throw rate last year. Specifically, this is a stat tracked by Basketball Reference. It's like a ratio of free throw attempts to field goal attempts. Okay, so Mikal last year had a free throw rate less than 0.2. You don't need to be super familiar with the stat, but all you need to do is trust me when I tell you that a free throw rate below 0.2 is really, really bad. So Mikal last year, he has a free throw rate of less than 0.2. I looked up all the players in the NBA who scored at least 20 points per game and had a free throw rate of less than 0.2 last year because there were several of them, and here's what I found. I found a tier of players consisting of Malcolm Brogdon, Jamal Murray, Terry Rozier, CJ McCollum, and one big, Nikola Vucevic. And I think there's a couple interesting things in there. First, I think it's interesting to note that most of those guys, except for Vucevic, who's an outlier, most of those guys are guards. I think that's because it just reiterates Mikal. Most guys his size are driving. Most guys his size are accepting contact, and he's just not doing that. So most of those guys in that list who were really bad at getting to the free throw line but still scored a lot of points last season are guards, unlike Mikal. But the second thing is you just see an obvious ceiling there. It's like it's important to be mindful of the fact that the Suns got Mikal Bridges as the 10th overall pick. So already I kind of feel like they knocked it out of the park. Like if he's just Nick Batum basically for the rest of his career and he just gets some assists and hits threes and cuts to the basket and plays lanky defense and switches, he's already that's already great value for the 10th pick. But if so much is resting on Mikal becoming like this high close to near max level player, well, there's a big difference between him being able to really take the next step and embrace being like the second best scorer on a championship team versus him maxing out as a Terry Rozier, CJ McCollum style player, which is like, I would take that. Obviously, you take that at the 10th pick. That's like still a 20-point per game scorer. But you guys understand that can't be the second best player in a championship team. And all of those guys have that one thing in common. If he wants to unlock the next level, it all starts with the aggression. He just has to change his mindset. Now, there's a couple things schematically I'm interested in talking about, but how does the coaching staff actually get through to him about just attacking the rim, I think is an interesting question because I don't know if he can do it. It's tough. I
also, just on that, how does the coaching staff balance the fact that they want to build in the regular season with Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton at the same time when they're already limited possessions to be doled out to these guys? So finding the balance between those two guys in the regular season. This is going to be a season, I think, for Suns fans, and I say this every year, it's difficult to judge coaches in the regular season because we often don't know the exact goal of any specific period of time. And for both Mikal Bridges and probably DeAndre Ayton, in whenever we do our DeAndre Ayton episode going forward, there's an argument to be made that the Suns need to allow them to take worse shots. Because when we talk about Mikal Bridges, his shot quality is high. Like he chooses the right spots to shoot shots, and that's why he's so efficient. But to grow, to be a better player, he kind of needs to force things a little bit. And here's some statistics to back that up. Sam brought it up. He's in the bottom 1% at getting to the rim, but finishing at the rim, he's in the top 95%.
That's fucking absurd.
It is absurd. So you're talking about a guy who, when he gets to the rim, he's scoring.
Yeah, he doesn't miss.
At one of the highest clips in the NBA, but he doesn't get
try,
there.
which is why this is a frustrating conversation, because it's like, dude.
It's a little bit of afraid of contact, I think, and it's funny that the Suns drafted two guys with that issue in the same draft. But here's another statistic to help sort of illustrate the and this, to me, this is the potential kind of popping off the page, right? Because, like, to be able to finish that well and maybe not getting there yet, that's potential. That's actually that gap between doing it and the talent when he does it. That's called potential, and sort of filling that gap is the difference between what he can be and what he is. He is in the 90th percentile of isolation effective field goal percentage. So isolation efficiency, he's in the 90th percentile. Obviously, he doesn't isolate much. He's in the bottom 12% of the amount that actually isolates. But this, to me, is another example of, well, if he isolates more and he drops down to like the 80th percentile in ISO efficiency, that's good for the Suns in the long run, because over time you can expect some development there, some improvement on the stats. So yes, maybe the overall effective field goal percentage, maybe the true shooting percentage that he has next season could go down. But when I look at these stats, and I think this is what you were getting at in your video, the reason we're having you on, Durag, I see an argument to be made that this guy deserves more shots, including some self-creation, in order to see what's there. I'm not sure what's there, and I think that's a difficult conversation for the Suns in that they have to decide what to pay him before this next season, before we can kind of test these and really put them to the test. But to me, that these stats kind of point out an argument to be made that he deserves to take a few more bad shots every single game just to see what he can do. Do you agree with that, Durag? I think you do.
I fully agree, and I think, if we just kind of track his timeline, he was robbed of that opportunity. He's first year he's playing with Josh Jackson and T.J. Warren. Second year he's playing with, trying to get paid, Kelly Oubre. Third year, he's playing with a championship level team in Chris Paul. And I do think that, again, the development of Mikal has been super unique, and his ability to adapt to like any type of role and fill that role almost to perfection is it's almost unmatched in the NBA. So I do think, I fully agree with your statement there. Like he's one of them ones.
And you know what? The sort of humble guy sitting in the corner just doing what coach tells him has paid off, because he's going to persevere, come out of the other side of this making more than T.J. Warren and making more than Kelly Oubre. I mean, everyone can, obviously more than Josh Jackson. Everyone can tell he's a great player, and now it's just about feeding him. Really, guys, we just got to feed him. We got to feed Mikal.
We're back to hashtag
feed Mikal,
right?
because that's literally what this is. And look, there are elements of it when we talk about the aggression. There are elements of it that are on Mikal, and there are elements of it that are on other guys. There are things that guys can do. First of all, we need to talk about the rotation, because the easiest way to do this is just to play Mikal less with Devin Booker and Chris Paul, and that kind of might feel like it's throwing him to these sort of crappy lineups and seeing what becomes of him, and maybe it's not
that's an example of the type of times where people would scream at Monty Williams in the middle of a random regular season
and to your
game
point
for their lineups.
To your point about that, I looked up the stats. When Mikal played with Chris Paul and Devin Booker this year, the Suns had a 116.8 offensive rating. That's awesome. 117 points per 100 possessions. That's really, really, really good. When just Mikal played and the other two guys were on the bench, so it meant he was sharing the floor with Cam Payne and, I don't know, Langston Galloway or Javon Carter, one of those guys, they dropped to a 105 offensive rating, which is really bad.
Yeah.
And that's obvious, because when you play with worse players, the team plays worse. I feel like I don't really have to explain that logic. But there's an element there of Well, you know what? Let's embrace the badness of that a little bit more this year and give Mikal some more minutes there. Where maybe you give him Ayton so that he has like a finisher who he can dump off to. Maybe you take Durag's idea and give him Shamit, so you take some of the shooting gravity and give him that. But that's how you give him reps. You got to give him these weird, wonky lineups and your regular season record doesn't matter so much if you can get the most out of this guy in the long run. And that's really how you're going to do it. You're not going to do it by playing him 35 minutes a game with Chris Paul and Devin Booker unless one of those two guys takes a significant step back, and we know they're not going to do that.
See, I kind of disagree a little bit there with the Devin Booker part. Like, I think the Chris Paul thing holds a little bit of weight, and I think Ayton specifically is the other guy, not Devin Booker. I think Mikal needs a spread floor. He is the cutter. He is the finisher at the rim on this team, and I think he just needs that space. Like, that's a little bit of I think giving Chris Paul and Ayton the bench unit and having those two guys destroy backup centers and backup guards and allowing Mikal to kind of feast and try his luck against these big names. I feel like he relishes that. You know, he had a great game in LA. He had a great game in the finals when they gave him the opportunity to shoot jumpers. You know, then they started taking him away, and that's when his lack of self-creation kind of reared its ugly head. But the opportunity presented without DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul on the floor, I think that is where Mikal is most successful, not Devin Booker not being there. I think those two guys are the linchpins of a potential lineup.
Booker
can I just remind you guys about, there was a stretch of games where Frank Kaminsky had the best chemistry with Mikal Bridges of anybody on the Suns because of his ability to find him on cuts on the spread floor.
I think we're not anticipating Frank to play a ton this season. We'll see what happens.
There's no spread big now,
again.
Really.
I don't think
that's why Shamit becomes so important.
Again, I think it's so with Booker. I agree with you. Like, if Booker shares a lot of time with Mikal, that's fine. Really, I think it comes down more to him just not playing with Chris Paul. He just can't play with both of them at the same time because then the touches aren't there for him. So I kind of think the odd man out there is Chris Paul. I do want Ayton playing with Mikal a lot because I feel like, as we already noted in the episode, they built the foundation of that chemistry. And to me, it's kind of like, so what if Ayton isn't a spread big? You want to force Mikal into that situations where he has to work, maybe sometimes with limited space, and just see what he can do with it. See if he can handle the pressure. I really, don't want to handle Mikal Bridges or DeAndre Ayton, and this episode isn't about DeAndre Ayton, but it's year 4 for both of these guys. They may or may not have an extension next year. The kid gloves have to come off. We understand that we're trying to build a championship team right now, and you maybe don't want to rock the boat too much, but the kid gloves have to come off. We have to throw these guys in some sticky situations. And another reason that I love the pairing of those two guys specifically, I said I would bring this guy's name up again. When I was making a Daniel Tice video for free agency this year, obviously the Suns didn't end up with Daniel Tice. He went to Houston for a little bit more money than the Suns were willing to offer, I guess. I don't even know if they gave his agent a call. But one of the reasons, Daniel Tice is well renowned is for his ceiling in Boston. When he played with Jason Tatum, he did something pretty remarkable with Jason Tatum. When I say that the onus isn't all on Mikal Bridges,
I know what you're talking about.
When I say the onus isn't all on Mikal Bridges to open himself up, sometimes it's about the chemistry that you develop with your big. So Daniel Tice, really good at recognizing when there's a drop defense being played, setting the initial screen. And Jason Tatum is one of these superstars in the NBA. He's like a 26, 27 point per game scorer, phenomenally talented player. But what Boston fans get on him so much about, even still in his 4th or 5th year or whatever, is the same exact thing with Mikal, that he's this lanky shooter, high release point, buttery stroke, but he doesn't attack the rim. He needs to drive more in order to achieve true elite top 5, top 10 level superstar status, and so far he hasn't gotten there. When he played with Daniel Tice, and Tice saw that drop defense coming, and he would seal off that drop defender, it kicked Tatum's ass into gear a little bit and convinced him. He played some of his best basketball in those lineups and actually attacked the rim in a way that was convincing for the people who were watching the film. I would like to see Ayton help out Mikal in the same way. I'd like to see him seek ways to leverage his physicality and understand that he's going to get some more opportunities to open up things for Mikal, and he's going to be the one sacrificing a little bit there. But use your body, seal off guys, and make sure Mikal gets to the rim, because it's going to pay dividends for everyone in the long run. You're going to get more dump-off passes, more alley-oop passes to yourself as well that way, if you do that. But you need to develop it.
That's a great
It all
point.
starts at the ground floor.
Can we just say, too, that I think a lot of this, we're having a conversation of that maybe I don't know how to put this. Maybe this is a confidence problem for Mikal. Like, maybe we've underrated the role that confidence plays in this, because we're talking about a guy, just say it again, 94th percentile in passing creation quality, so he makes smart passes when he does it, 90th percentile in ISO effective field goal percentage, one of the best finishers at the rim in the NBA, top 5% of the league. And yet those three things, he does not do
Mike,
that often.
Here's a stat for you. We've traded so many stats today already, but the Suns were 10-0 in the playoffs when Mikal attempted at least 10 shots. They were 10-0.
He is
They were
a
undefeated.
monster. He is a
What
monster.
What were they when he attempted less than 10 shots? They were 4-8 in the playoffs. But 10-0 when he attempted. Can you imagine if that was Kelly Oubre for a second, guys? Like, he would never let us hear the end of it. He should.
Neither would certain
And
fans.
neither would certain fans. Mikal should not have maybe he does, but he has no right to have a confidence problem. He's too good, and he's been too valuable to this team from this point.
Well, I mean, Kelly Oubre is a great example of someone that has maybe too much confidence, and guess what? He was great at attacking the rim. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But I think that's kind of the point, is if we're talking about him being a star, he has to treat himself like a star on the basketball court as well. That means handling the ball like a star. That means demanding it on certain possessions. That means calling for the screen when he's confident he could beat his own man. And those are things that we have not seen him do yet. In a way, we're kind of asking him to shed what Villanova instilled into him. Because even though he was kind of a star on that Villanova team, so much about that team was sacrificing yourself. And at some point, if we're talking about him being a star, he's got to stop that. He's got to stop sacrificing
Villanova
himself.
was
He's got to start demanding.
Villanova
it.
was the classic collectivist environment where it heightens the floor of role players but arguably dampens their ceiling. And now Mikal has to be selfish, possibly for the first time in his basketball playing career. He has to be a little bit selfish, not too selfish. You want to rein it in, but just a little bit selfish, because we're not going to unlock the true powers.
I wrote down here that taking a note out of Kelly Oubre's book would not be a bad idea for Mikal. Like,
there
just
you go.
A little bit more aggression.
Be a little reckless.
Exactly. Just attack, man. Like, you have all of the tools necessary to be somebody, like you're saying, who's a dominant finisher at the rim, a dominant force, drawing attention, making the right pass. Like, all the ancillary stuff is there. He just needs to rein it in and like really devote to getting to the middle of the floor. And I do think it's mostly roll. I think the easiest way to fix it is roll.
He watches Abdul Nader in practice. He sees Abdul Nader put his head down and recklessly attack the rim when he has no business doing so. Take something from that. There's a lesson to be learned there.
Do you think it's because he's afraid of missing a game?
I think, honestly, I've thought about that. I mean, the whole Iron Man reputation means a lot to him.
He's never missed a game, and he's proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, take your own experience. Mike, you're 30, whatever the hell, however old you are.
That's how I describe it.
You don't rebound anymore in pickup. You've told me that, right?
Oh, no. I don't
You don't
jump.
You don't jump in pickup anymore because you're afraid of getting...
I've given up jumping.
You're afraid of getting hurt.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing.
Jump shots is the only time.
Everyone... Dude, my back is fucking sludge, and I'm only 23 years old. When I play pickup, I'm not playing with the same physicality that I was even 4 or 5 years ago when I was in college. I am absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I don't want to do the whole thing where podcasters pretend like they're professional basketball players for a second, because we're definitely not.
It's called a Ryan Russillo.
Yeah, I was going to say a Simmons or Ryan Russillo. They both do it. But my point is just that is natural human instinct. That feeling of being afraid of the contact. I mean, look, Mikal knows how much money is on the line. He does.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might not be on the line by the time the season starts.
He's going to get, if he doesn't get paid by the time the season's going to start, he's going to get possibly up to $25 million a year, regardless of how much he attacks the rim this year. You know, that's stuff that we want to see out of him. But I don't necessarily know if his agent is pressing him for that. He could play it safe and continue to be the role player that he is and make Aaron Gordon money or better. I'm serious.
It's just funny to describe it as Aaron Gordon money at this point. Now we're I think this dovetails into our conversation. We're almost asking him to be a dick, kind of be a dick a little bit more. Embrace your inner dickishness. And it's actually something that, Sam, you've talked about defensively as something that he can change, because there's an infamous game, and I think we talked about it. It may have been even before we started recording, a Cleveland game where it went to overtime. Mikal Bridges took over defensively and to an extent offensively and just absolutely dominated them defensively. Now, he's a great defender, right? We're not talking about a guy who needs to improve in order to be a good defender. He already is great. But as I said with the Devin Booker conversation, as I'll say in the future, commonly players getting better at what they're already good at is the way that they improve the most, more than just developing new skills out of the blue late in their careers, or at least a few years into their career. So defensively, you're thinking about him getting better. Sam, can you explain what you talked about? You almost described it as he needs a little bit more Patrick Beverley in him defensively. Do you remember talking about that, and can you explain that?
I mean, if you've just heard Mikal talk to other guys in interviews before, I don't remember. I think it was the Duncan Robinson pod he was on, but he was like, I mean, part of it's just Mikal's a humble guy, but he was talking to Duncan, and he was like, yeah, honestly, like, it's dudes like you who are the guys I hate guarding the most, because you got to move all around, and you see why, you begin to see why Mikal is used in the way he is for the Suns, as this point of attack defender who stays on ball, because there's this element of kind of the off-ball. When you're off-ball and you're chasing a guy around screens, and that's just one example, there are also off-ball roles where you're off-ball, but you're basically checking a superstar. So much of it is a mental game. And there's part of that of getting into guys' heads that I just feel like Mikal could improve on. Everyone knows he has the 7'1" wingspan, and everyone knows, you know, he can get a little bit stronger, but is generally an athletic dude. But sometimes just getting into their heads is not there. Yeah, it's the Patrick Beverley gene. I don't remember exactly how I explained it before, but that's the essence of it. The Javon Carter gene. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine what Javon Carter, the best way Suns fans can think about it, can you imagine what Javon Carter would do if he had a 7'1" wingspan? We need to unlock a little bit of that in Mikal Bridges.
That'd be insane. Defensively, Durag, what do you think Mikal could do better? And feel free to say nothing if you'd like to, but is there anything that stands out to you?
I mean, you guys have definitely touched on it all. The disruption is something that if he could get back to the levels of even the year previously, you know, I feel like the way Mikal plays, his level of disruption leads to self-created buckets, right? He gets out in transition. He's ripping a primary who probably has no backline defense. So if he can just be a little bit more of a pest on ball, I think that's really the only nitpicky thing I can talk about with his defense. Like he doesn't have the strength to really be a banger like maybe even a Cam Johnson could be down the line. So that's really the only thing I can think of. Just being more aggressive in your opportunities and trusting the system now with a full year behind these guys. Trusting them to recover your mistake. And you know, he's an excellent rotator, so it's not like once he's out of position, he's going to stay out of position. So I think just taking more risks, like that's the next key step on defense, and seeing what the tandem of him and Ayton can do if they take more risk. You know, lunge for blocks, go for steals. Like what could that be? Are we now talking about the best defense in the NBA? You know, who knows? Yeah,
I like that. I'll just say one thing that I think, and then I want to have a different conversation on defense, but I just think he can get stronger. If he gets stronger, just a little bit stronger even, I don't want to limit his mobility, because I think his ability to chase guys that are smaller than him is one of his biggest skill sets, but a little bit more strength I think would make a big difference for him, whether that be defensively on rebounds. He's good at chasing down the ball. He's got long arms, gets his hands on stuff commonly. A little bit extra strength, I think, would make a big difference here. I just want to call out something. Call out some stat guys, if you will, on something that happened this last year. ranking, as we were talking about, I don't like when people rank things because it often takes away the context of what they're doing, because they're ranking them just based on arbitrary statistics or their general feelings about these guys or narrative-based stuff, whatever it is. But Mikal Bridges, his overall stats defensively were worse in 2020, 2021 than they were in 2019, 2020. And what that did is it caused people to say, he's just not as good as we thought he was. People were just kind of ranking him lower than players that I think, just by watching the game, he was clearly a better defender than. And what they're doing is they're just looking at stats. Like, these guys are just looking at stats and then ranking them based on stats. But what the stats are missing is this. He went from guarding, we talked about it, he was rated on B-Ball Index as a power forward in 1920 to a point guard in 2020, 2021. And what a lot of the advanced statistics do when it comes to the specific metrics that those types of people like to use is they factor in blocks, they factor in steals, and they factor in deflections. And just to illustrate the difference between being on the ball constantly and being off the ball and capable of sort of getting into the passing lanes a little bit more, in the overall percentile for deflections in 1920, when he was off the ball, rated as a power forward defensively, he was in the upper 92nd percentile of deflections. Once he was moved onto the ball and he was guarding point guards, it was down to the 68th percentile of deflections. So a pretty large decrease in deflections for him. I wrote this down as something that he can improve on, but the more I thought about it, the more it kind of irked me that what this is more of an illustration of his role change. He changed from guarding off the ball to guarding on the ball. When you're guarding on the ball, it's a lot more difficult to get deflections because you're no longer in the passing lanes. You're at that point of attack. The ball is leaving away from you instead of coming towards you. And I think that difference is sort of what's caused those defensive metrics to change for Mikal Bridges from 1920 to 2020, 2021. So when people are looking at that, make sure to factor in the context. This type of stuff matters. Maybe he can get a little bit more stingy on steals, I think, Durag, like you talked about there. And I think that's true. Be a little bit more aggressive, especially now that the Suns are good, because refs tend to give a longer leash to teams when they're good.
Right.
But I think this is the type of context that I think is really important. I don't know. Does that deflection stat, does that worry you guys at all? It doesn't really worry me.
I wrote it off as exactly what you said. Role change.
Yeah. It's a role change. Anything else stand out to you defensively, Sam?
I like the point you made about strength. I would just echo, another benefit there, dying on screens a little bit less.
Yes, that's a great one. That's a great one.
There's a reason people always say point of attack defense is not as important as team defense, and that's because in the age where, defensive schemes feel that they need, or just teams feel that they need to switch everything because, you could have the best point of attack defender in the league, but if he's getting screened out of the play 4 seconds into the shot clock, then what good does it do you? So in some cases, Mikal can kind of stay, and you don't need to switch, but that only happens if he's strong enough to fight over the screen. Obviously, his length helps him because he can come over a screen and be trailing a play and still be effective as a trailer. That's something that scouts are always looking for prospects who are coming into the NBA. It's like maybe this guy who's a shooting guard, a point guard on defense, whatever, is getting screened out of a lot of plays. But if he's got a 6'4 wingspan, then he's going to be useless, and it's going to be a 2-on-1. If he's got a 6'8", 6'9 wingspan, then maybe he can come from behind the play, get a hand on the ball. So scouts are always looking at that thing. You got at that stuff. You got to think about it with Mikal as well. He's effective as a trailer, but it's always better to not be a trailer in the first place. But yeah, just I don't want to change his role too much. I think just the general switchable guy that he was last year was great, and a little bit of strength, like you said, Mike, good idea, without hurting his mobility too much.
So I think the overall lesson in this episode is feed Mikal.
Feed
right?
Mikal.
That's where we're all
Mikal,
at.
Man. So, I mean,
number 2
give
option,
him more
baby.
opportunities.
How confident? Here's the last question then. The last overarching question: how confident are we that it actually happens? Durag, what do you think?
All right, to give an arbitrary number, 20% all-star, 80% current level, if not just slightly above where he's at. I think it really depends on Monty, man. Like if he's given the freedom offensively with, like you're saying, the lineup diversity, that just that just goes a giant way. He's too good at everything to not just produce with more opportunities, and however he has to get those, whether that's by coach's design or just like we're saying, just being more Kelly Oubre like and just saying, nah, like screw y'all, like I'm taking this. Whatever he needs to do, that's really it. Like,
yeah, I like that. I mean, I will say we called out Ryan Russillo assigning a random percentage of your confidence. That's more of a Bill Simmons, I think, assigning a random percentage there. That's interesting. You talked about just potential of an all-star there. I want to ask you quickly before we move on to Sam and see what he thinks here. Usage-wise, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, 1 and 2. Is that still where you want things? And then after that, would you put Mikal Bridges there? Like ahead of DeAndre Ayton as far as what you want the usage to be for the Suns next season, Durag?
So I want Mikal to be the number 2 option offensively. So if that means making him more of a primary and kind of stationing Chris Paul off ball, using Chris Paul as a screener, then so be it. But I want the Suns to experiment, man. We're too good of a team already to not take risks and try stuff, especially in the first couple of games. Like, give Mikal 10 games to start the season to see, like, let's give him 4 pick and roll possessions a game and see what he can do. That's 40 total possessions over 10 games, and that's a decent sample size to see whether or not you can continue that strategy or not. And I don't think that's at risk of jeopardizing their playoff spot or anything. So again, it just boils down to role. Like, can they bring this out of him? Will they bring this out of him?
And you know what? Monty's a reasonable guy. I feel like it's a tough sell. Like, you can't. I think we all agree here, but it's like, not necessarily coming to him from the perspective of, hey, give Mikal Bridges 4 pick and roll possessions per game or else. So, then he's standing there on the sideline and has to count out, okay, he's gotten 1, 2, 3. Like, it's not like that. Like, I want to stress that when we talk about this stuff, it's not like that. Everything that happens should be dictated by the flow of the game. But I think if you're Monty, there's just a good argument that you should have more confidence in Mikal. You've watched him play more than anyone else at this point. You should have a certain level of confidence in this guy. And one thing is allowing him to take on those pick and roll possessions. You don't have to count them out literally, but just allow more of them. Another thing is recognizing when he has a mismatch and just kind of throwing up your hands and say, yeah, go for it. ISO. They switched. You screened for Devin Booker or Chris Paul. They switched. And now you have a 6'3" point guard on you. Go for it. Like, do that a couple times.
Landry Shamet, man. I'm telling you.
Sure,
Landry, he opens up everything, bro. Like, the 6'3" guy is going to be guarding Landry Shamet. I'm envisioning this insane lineup of just offensive destruction and movement, and it's amazing. Like, that's what I'm picturing with Landry Shamet there.
Hey, whatever I've said about Landry in the past, I like that. I like the image that rests in my head of that. But at the end of the day,
how confident are you? With these improvements?
I'm confident because I believe in Mikal Bridges. He's such a smart, talented guy. Like, there's just no one I would rather bet on. However, I agree with Durag and what he said earlier that it doesn't happen without the cooperation of the coaching staff. So that's kind of what it rests on. And I will also say the mindset stuff about Mikal, like attacking the rim, and there's a difference between him just getting to 20 points per game and doing it where he actually becomes a completely different player with his tendencies. And the former is totally like 100% possible. The latter is really, really tough. It takes a lot of hard work. So we'll see. That's more of like a long-term goal, I think. But I would like to see slight improvements in that realm this season.
Mm-hmm. I guess to really get into my confidence level, I think I just want to explain it as, like, for example, for his isolation efficiency, the bottom 12th percentile of total isolations, top 90th percentile in field goal percentage on those isolations. Do I think he could be in like the top 70th percentile in isolations? No. Do I think he can grow from that 12th percentile to maybe 30th percentile, something like that on this team? Yeah. So I guess the way I would couch it is saying, I think that I'm pretty confident and he's going to improve. I'm very confident he's going to improve. Am I confident that he's going to get to the level that the Suns need to be in order for them to like really, really, really compete at the very, very, very highest level this season? My level of confidence on that is lower, I think, than just the general idea that he's going to improve. Because I do think that even though he's good at the things that he does, the amount of which that he does it is so low for a lot of these self-creation things that it would take a massive improvement for him to get there as early as next season. I think he will improve, and I think those improvements could make a massive difference, but I don't see like a massive leap coming. And if it did, that would be amazing. It would be almost unprecedented with the amount of things that would have to change in order for him
If
to be
Mikal
that.
Bridges...
So I guess I'm confident, just not like over.
Couldn't you just say, like, if Mikal Bridges, God forbid, you know, he's going to be on the Suns, but, like, let's say he was on a really bad team now this season for some reason. He would totally do, like, the Jeremy Grant thing, right? And become, like, a 23-point-per-game scorer out of nowhere who does it on, like...
Yes.
On a bad team?
on a bad team who, like, but who retains... The reason I like Jeremy Grant is because he retained, like, roughly average efficiency on a really terrible team, which isn't so easy a feat. That would be Mikal. And my point being, no one saw it coming with Jeremy, right? Because he just wasn't allowed to do that stuff in Denver. Mikal was allowed to do it a little bit in Phoenix. I'm not saying it's going to be a one-to-one comparison, but I just have good vibes about it. You know, I'm not like an optimist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm not usually a guy who like thinks good things are going to happen, but it's Mikal Bridges. Good things are going to happen.
I love it, and I think that's a good place to stop on the good vibes. We're all riding the wave of good vibes for Mikal Bridges. It'll be interesting to see what he does this coming season, because his improvements, I think, could have one of the largest impacts on this team, not just this year, but years from now going forward. Durag, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel at Durag Hoops on Twitter, and then Durag Hoops on YouTube as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to promote on this podcast, Durag?
Yes, I had to wait till the very end, but shout out my Hooping with the Fellas boys every Sunday. Appreciate y'all. You know, those are great guys, so got to shout them out here on the podcast.
Who do you cook the most?
No, I mean...
Call him out. Who do you cook the most?
Aaron guards me the most, so he gets cooked the most. But he's a he's a great dude. He's a great defender. You know, no shade at him at all. But if you're guarding a score, you know, you get scored on. So it is what it is.
All right, good stuff. We'll be back very soon. On the next Internal Development.
We're thrilled to welcome Trevor Ariza to the Phoenix Suns family. Going into free agency, we want it to be aggressive, as we mentioned before, and our team needs, and what we feel like we need. We need his defensive ability and versatility, his shooting ability.
I know that coming here is going to be a challenge of trying to improve and get better in teaching, but I'm up for the challenge.
Plus,
He puts it down!
All that and more on the next Internal Development.
This episode is brought to you by Ro. Confidence is everything. Women can sense it. And trust me, they love it. But if you're in your head worried about performance, that swag, unfortunately, gentlemen, it's gone. Ro Sparks keeps you ready. When the moment hits, you can step up like a superhero and handle your business. No doubt, just confidence.
Fellas, Rose Sparks gets you ready fast, dissolving under your tongue and working in 15 minutes on average. No waiting, no missing the moment, plus it stays active up to 36 hours.
So when the mood hits, you can go back to back to back, round after round after round. Ro connects guys with medical provider 100% online, so there's no awkward conversation with in-person providers. Go to ro.com/sparks to see if you qualify. If prescribed, new sexual health patients gets $15 off Sparks on reoccurring plan. Connect with the provider at ro.co/fourth to find out if prescriptions Ro Sparks are right for you. That's ro.co/fourth for $15 off your first order. If approved, treatment ships directly to their door. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, and or manufacturing review. For full safety information, go to ro.co/safety info.